I was in, what's that? King's Road. That's apparently a couple nice ones.
Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. Everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. Well, Tom, your rise to success came after you arrived in New York, and you went through various bands. Did you have any real idea when you first came to New York of what sort of music you wanted to play?
Well, some sort of rock and roll. In other words, something with two guitars and bass and drums, rather than keyboard-oriented stuff or horn-oriented stuff. There was a lot of that kind of stuff around in the late 60s. Basically that kind of thing, that kind of format. Well, it was hard to find people to play with.
You had one or two hassles in the early days. For instance, your former bassist, Richard Hell, there were one or two problems there.
Oh, weren't any problems. It's just we were much more sort of energy oriented in those days. It was more a band of like friends who just had a good time on stage in a certain way, rather than playing music. But the more like we'd make tapes and things like that, and the more we heard it, it didn't sound very good. I mean, to our own ears. So, you know, when he left the band, it was just a matter of finding somebody who could play good. No big deal.
How did you arrive at the name Television? Very commercial title.
Actually, it was Hell that thought that name up. We had about 200 names, and that was one of them, which seemed apt at the time.
Well, in the early days, you came out with one particular bootleg single called Little Johnny Jewel, which an awful lot of people have picked up on.
That was just a little thing that we cut in. Actually, it was cut in Patti Smith's rehearsal room because her drummer had a 4-track machine in there, and we were sitting around one night, and we had saved a couple $100, so we just decided we'd put out a little record. So we sort of wrote this little thing on the spot, and I did it twice, then I just made up some lyrics, and the whole thing was done in about 4 hours. So then went out and pressed 500 that sold really good in New York, and got a lot of press. In fact, a lot of European places started to order it. And somebody in Paris wanted 1,000, and they sent us the money, so we printed 1,000 for them, stuff like that. That's how that got around.
You mentioned Patti Smith. She must have been quite an influence on you in your early days. She must have helped.
Well, she helped. We both came out of the same clubs at the same time. I remember she had asked me to play in this single that she had done a year before Johnny Jewel, which is where I got the idea of how cheap you could put out a single and do everything your own way. We used to share the bill a lot at this place, CBGBs.
I was going to ask you about this club because we hear an awful lot about it over here, but it's probably totally alien to anything that British fans have ever come across. It's a fairly freaky scene.
I wouldn't, actually, it's not freaky. Max's Kansas City, what in the late 60s might be called freaky, but CBGBs is just it's a Bowery. I don't know if they have an equivalent of the Bowery in London. It's just where all the old alcoholics fall asleep in the street, and it's nothing but warehouses and very run-down neighborhood. And this is about 4 years ago, and we were looking for, there were no clubs in New York we could play without having a recording contract. So a friend of mine suggested that we find a bar that had a cabaret license. In other words, they could have live music. And we just sort of found that place, and he didn't have any rock and roll back then, so we sort of convinced him to put us on one night a week. And then a lot of bands, we'd have to advertise ourselves in the papers because he wouldn't advertise us for anything. A lot of bands found out about that. He started having music more than, he'd have it on weekends, now he has it about 6 nights a week. And he had some kind of festival, I think, about 3 years ago, which got him a lot of press internationally. I mean, a lot of those bands. See, I'm not super familiar with all those bands that play there or came out of there. But I wouldn't really call it freaky. It's just where it's really a relaxed place, and it's cheap liquor too, and it's fairly big. There's all sorts of people in there. It's not like a glamour-oriented scene. It's not like a fashion scene, anything like that.
Is there a feeling in New York, in places like CBGBs, that the new wave music is really the thing of the future?
Well, I'd say, the new wave in New York, I would say ended 2 years ago.
Really?
Really, yeah. Um, uh, I mean, that's my feeling. The bands that are playing CBGBs now. I mean, I haven't even seen most of them, but I don't think they have the same. They're sort of jumping on a bandwagon. In other words, in New York, I don't know what it's like here in New York. There's a lot of kids who'll go buy a guitar and play a week and then try to get on stage at CBGBs. And there's no the reality of them being bands or being musicians, even if not the greatest musicians or anything like that. It's really just jumping on a bandwagon because they think they can get their pictures in the paper real fast or something like that, or they can make a lot of money, or all of which is sort of silly because you don't really make much money.
Well, round about the time you were playing there, Tom, I believe you were writing some of the songs which eventually turned up on Marquee Moon.
Yeah, that's the case. Yeah. In fact, even before, some of the songs on Marquee Moon are like 4 or 5 years old. They've been rearranged several times before they finally got recorded.
The album seems to have a very raw, jagged sort of sound. Was that the intention?
Well, I think it sort of sounds like we sound. Some of the sounds on it could have been better. Some of them are pretty good. I mean, it was done in the studio that was very old-fashioned. I mean, the equipment in the studio was falling apart, you could say. Wires would be like making all kinds of noise and stuff like that. It wasn't what you call your sophisticated 1980s studio.
Must have been a bit off-putting.
Well, it put our engineer off, this guy Indy Johns, who's a guy we got mainly because he worked with the Stones and Zeppelin and that kind of guitar-oriented music. I mean, he couldn't believe the place. The first day he saw it, he wanted to leave. He says he couldn't hear anything in there, and what kind of place have you brought me to? And he kept saying things like, what is this, a Velvet Underground trip? What's going on here? What the fuck? What is this?
It's rather interesting you should pick Andy Johns, really, because, as you say, he's worked with the Stones and Led Zeppelin, which is rather far removed from television's music. Do you think that the fact that you have picked Andy Johns indicates an admiration for people like the Stones?
Yeah, for the sounds. I mean, Rolling Stones records always sound great. I mean, some of their songs are not as good as some of their other songs, but they always have a certain sound quality that's really, that I really like. Same with the early Zeppelin stuff. It has that same element. It's not so polished as, say, Elton John or some of the other types, other rockers. Also, the thing about Andy is when I talked to him on the phone, he's like my age, and he's real easy to get along with. He likes to joke around a lot. He's not what's the word? He's not completely reserved or something.
Well, you've been lumped, as it were, in the new wave bracket. Now, what do you think of the British punk bands who are doing so well over here at the moment?
I haven't heard a lot of them. I haven't heard any of the albums. I just heard the singles that were out about 3 or 4 months ago. To me, they sound like the Ramones. I mean, really, the lyrics are better, and I think the vocals are better. I mean, the vocals are stronger in a certain way. But the guitar playing, the drumming, all that stuff just reminds me of the Ramones.
Is that praise or criticism?
That's description.
Very diplomatic.
Well, that's just what they sound like to me. I mean, it's something you're either in the mood for or you're not. I mean, I'd rather hear it than it's hard because I'm trying to think of somebody who's not on Elektra. Actually, I'd rather hear it than Paul McCartney. I'd rather hear it than Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
A lot of the British bands seem to be coming out with very aggressive stuff. They're coming out with titles like Anarchy in the UK. Do you go along with that sort of thing?
Well, I'm not too political. I mean, that is the thing, that a lot of these lyrics, The Clash, I think, is the other one. Very political stuff. It seems a little naive to me. But like I say, I'm not political or directly political.
Does it worry you that television might be bracketed in the same sort of bag?
Mm, I wouldn't say we're not a part of the new wave, but I would say we're not a punk group. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there is a difference there, unless new wave is a new term for punk groups or something. I mean, new wave could be more encompassing than punk, I think. I wouldn't call Talking Heads a punk group, but I call them new wave. Stranglers, I wouldn't. I think that's the group. I wouldn't call them a punk group. They'd be new wave.
What are you aiming to get across in your own lyrics?
Oh God, I can never say. I can never answer that. I mean, it's just up to listeners to feel it out.
Or would you say that Television were a better band than the British punk bands?
Mm-mm. Nah. No, I wouldn't say that. Gee, why would I say that? No, I like some of these bands.
Oh, it's just that I've read one or two interviews, where it's
Well,
been
look at
suggested.
these interviews over here. I mean, some of them are so disgraceful that I hope none of these people have show their faces in any concerts we're doing over here, because they're in for some trouble. Trouble. I won't mention any names, but they probably know who they are. Some of them are really nice, and some of them are totally irresponsible. I guess it's like that in any field, really.
Do you think that the new wave really has something to offer, or do you think it's just perhaps teenage frustration filling a bit of a gap in the rock scene at the moment?
Well, that's sort of what rock and roll's all about. Yeah, I think it's exciting. I mean, that's what it has to offer. That's what rock should be. Is exciting. I mean, that's my complaint about. I don't think Paul McCartney is exciting. I don't think Emerson, Lake, and Palmer are exciting.
How about your own live act, Tom? Because we've read reports of one or two slight hassles on, for instance, the Peter Gabriel tour in the States with sound and what have you.
Yeah. Well, when you're opening act and that whole thing was done for free. I mean, we had to borrow money to do that. And when you're working in that situation where you've got like half an hour to open somebody up and the headliner's paying for the sound crew, then nobody's going to really do anything for you. And you just sort of walk out, and half the time you don't get a sound check. I think of out of 18 dates, we had maybe 6 sound checks. So the only thing, you hear a tape later, and the only thing coming out of the PA is like a bass drum and a vocal. I mean, I might throw something at a group that sounded that bad. Actually, I don't think I would, but I don't blame anybody. Although nobody actually threw anything at us. I will say, nobody threw. That tour went over pretty well, in fact. Down in Texas and Missouri, we went over real well. Which is places we weren't quite sure about how they feel about us. I mean, in the States, there's a bit of prejudice about New York bands. I think it had a lot to do with the New York Dolls, who didn't go over well at all. I mean, there's a bit of resistance amongst radio people over there too, to like even listen to bands out of New York. A lot of that has to do with this song about glue that the Ramones did. There's some DJ, without listening to it first, would throw it on the air, and then that would be, it'd create a lot of tension amongst his peers or something. I don't know. And so now there's this thing about if they think or they know a group is from New York, they don't play the record.
Talking about bands like the Ramones, they're much written about and much vaunted, but they don't seem to be making much of an impression on the American charts.
No, they don't. Well, the whole thing about this punk phenomena is there's two things about it. The one thing is it's not primarily musical. It's primarily, in my opinion, like sociological. In other words, it's easy to look at from that point of view rather than music, because there's not much music there, which is something you couldn't say about like the so-called British invasion of the 60s. I mean, the Stones were basically a blues band, and the Beatles had a lot of melody going, had a lot of lyrical content going, which is something you don't find. And the other thing about it is that it's also in some to some degree a creation of newspaper writers who really don't, who are somewhat jaded, who are given 100 free records a week and are somewhat jaded, somewhat bored with who want to hear something different, even if it's if it doesn't have much to do with music anymore. I mean that's what I see going on with this whole punk thing. It's easy to write about. It's funny to watch.
But it's a case of rock press hype, you think?
Well, see, I like a lot of it, so I don't think it's a bad hype. I mean, like I'd rather read about it more than a lot of other things. I mean, it is interesting, but it's not everybody's cup of tea, I guess.
You're talking about the 60s, Tom. There's a fair amount of 60s in your music. For instance, Love are a band that television would seem to have been influenced by.
Yeah, you could say that. In fact, one of the reasons why we wanted to sign with Elektra is because when I was a kid, I used to buy Elektra records mainly for their covers, and also because they were the first company that started to take production seriously in rock and roll. In other words, they started to... Somebody in that, I think it was a guy named Botnick. Bruce Botnick was an engineer who used to work on a lot of that stuff, like Paul Butterfield Blues Band. I don't think he did them. He did Doors. He did the Love albums. They had a certain sound to them that was really... They had an advanced sound to them. And they also had they also took chances on artists that were maybe... whose commerciality was a question mark, like the Doors. Love was another one.
Well, Marquee Moon has proved a very successful debut album. Were you happy with that sound?
I think you can always get a better sound. I think it's a good sound for our first record, and coming out of New York at this time, it sounds good. I mean, I'd like to find someone else to work with on our second record, just because I like the experience of working with someone with different, recording techniques and that kind of stuff. Like I'm supposed to see this guy, Chris Thomas, sometime before we go. Talk to him about doing a record.
I think the fact, though, that the sound is fairly sparse on this first album has helped us sell it, because things like Marquee Moon, the title track, really do come across as quite hard-hitting numbers.
Well, I didn't see the point of like putting synthesizer or any of that stuff on it. I mean, that material doesn't need it. It's arranged in a certain way where I think it sounds full enough without over-arranging it or adding a lot of other parts and stuff. I added the little keyboards to it because I thought it sounded good. But that's really all it is. That's the only difference between that and live, is that there's a few keyboards here and there.
There's a very extended guitar solo on Marquee Moon. Are you likely to repeat that on stage?
Well, it's usually longer on stage. And the record turned out to be longer than we thought, time-wise. I thought the songs were at 3 minutes, and they turned out to be 5, and I thought Marquee Moon was about 8, and it turned out to be 11, and we had to fade it out early and stuff like that. I mean, I like playing long numbers. I like numbers where you can take your time with something and develop something and things like that.
So what sort of act can we expect from television? You're starting your British tour tomorrow, Sunday.
Oh, well, you can expect like 4 zombies. Sort of. Just half shuffling around the stage, looking like they're going to collapse.
Have you been working on the stage
usually,
act?
No, we never developed an act or any kind of thing. I just like acts that evolve naturally, and like all the motion on stage comes out of the emotions of the performers at the time. I mean, whether it's standing still and playing or maybe shaking a shoulder or something. It's just I don't like theatrics that are just planned and laid out like that. I mean, a group like Kiss, which is completely like that, couldn't get away with that. They would have had people throwing stuff at them like 6 years ago, 8 years ago. Because I think people are getting fed up with it now too. It's just not real at all. I like some sort of reality in performance. I mean, I don't think Hendrix ever did anything that he didn't feel. the Stones seem to be the same way to me. This theatrical stuff never did anything to me. Alice Cooper is the other. I guess he's the one who started all that jazz in a way.
So as far as you're concerned, the music is far more important than the theatrics.
Yeah, the music has to generate the performance, so to speak.
Well, we've said that some of the songs on Marquee Moon were possibly 4 years old. Have you been writing any new stuff recently?
Yeah, there's all kind of stuff, but we haven't had time to like work it out to play it yet, let alone record it. That's something I think we'll do after this whole tour that we're going to do. Is we'll have to go back and spend a month rehearsing a lot of new stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's half worked out, but it's not quite ready to play, really.
What is your main ambition for television now?
Oh God, I don't know. It's really just keeping working, and hope that the sound systems get better. It's really your sound man is the man between you and an audience. If you have a bad sound man, then your audience isn't going to like it. It's as simple as that. It's really what it boils down to.
Are you looking forward to playing Britain?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing here. In fact, even more so than the States in a way, because it's. I think there's a thing called the English ear. I mean, I think the English ear is much better than the American ear, really. And you can hear it on any group that ever came out of England. It's not just in the recording techniques, which are pretty good, but there's a certain ear here that I don't know if it exists in Europe because I've never been over the continent. But it's like sort of inspiring to play to in a certain way. I mean, I hope we don't go out of tune too much. We've got a reputation for being slightly out of tune. When I saw the Stones, they were the same way, though. A few strings a little sharp or flat. It doesn't really hurt.
I was going to say, the sort of sound you get on Marquee Moon, it really doesn't matter that much, does it, on that particular sort of stuff?
No, it doesn't, really. You can hear it in a lot of jazz. I used to listen to a lot of jazz when I was 14 or 15, and you can hear it even in that, like in the saxophone is a really hard instrument to play in tune because it's all in the mouthpiece and the pressure and stuff. You can hear a lot of jazz units that weren't quite in tune with each other, where the trumpet and the sax wasn't in tune, but sometimes it sounds better that way. Eno, we did a little tape with Eno about 3 years ago, and he used to say the same thing. In fact, I think I remember him suggesting that you yank the neck of a guitar a little bit and put it slightly out of tune, because sometimes it sounds a little brighter, sounds a little better.
How did you get on with Eno? Because he's noted for way out ideas over here.
Well, Eno was a really nice guy. I just didn't like the sound he was getting on of the band. It was a little too removed, I think is the right word. Wasn't quite as gutsy as we wanted. I like his records, though. His own records are really nice. In fact, if he'd gotten a sound for us as good as he had gotten for himself, I'm sure we could have worked something out. This is the whole thing that Island was. This is a demo for Island. I think this was done. Well, let's see. Hell was in the band for that, but contrary to a lot of things I've been reading, Hell wasn't in the band for Johnny Jewel. That was our new bass player. There's a big difference in that. If you could hear those demo tapes, you'd hear the difference in the bass playing, right? Fred's a much more fluid bass player.
Well, what does the future hold for television then, do you think, Tom? I mean, can you see yourselves spearheading the new wave, or do you think you'll go off in another direction?
Well, we wouldn't deliberately spearhead anything. I mean, see, that's another thing that media would create. I mean, they can create anything they want. I mean, they will anyway, regardless of what anyone says. The other tendency I see particularly in the European press is they build someone up too far, then they have nothing to do but to tear them down. And I saw that happen with Patti Smith over here. Is that a few papers really raved, and then she came over here, and then they just, like, I didn't know what her shows were like over here or anything like that. But there is that tendency to build something, overexcite themselves about something, and then to tear them down. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened to us at all.
Because you've had quite good press so far.
Yeah, it seems we have, yeah.
What sort of direction do you think your music will take then?
That I really can't say. I couldn't say at all. I would definitely say we won't be getting acoustic. And I don't think I don't think it'll be going into a big band arrangements.
But presumably the songs you're writing now are pretty far removed from the stuff you wrote originally for Marquee Moon.
What do you mean?
Well,
Like,
there's been 4 years, since some of those songs came out.
yeah, Marquee Moon's about 2 years old. Well, actually, the Elevation was written like a month before the album was done. See No Evil was maybe 6 weeks before the album was done. So if that indicates any kind of direction, Torn Curtain was written pretty close to when the album was done too. Guiding Light was too. They're the songs. They're our latest songs in a way that we're doing live. We do a couple covers once in a while. We're doing Satisfaction, a Stone song.
Right.
I don't know if we're gonna do it here because I hear a lot of other bands do it, so it might be kind of boring for everyone. Do it. I think we're probably gonna do a Dylan thing, Knocking on Heaven's Door. Probably do that.
What sort of arrangement do you give that?
I don't know. Someone said it's like a Stax arrangement. Remember, like Booker T and the MGs, those kind of things with a lot of rhythm chops, sort of rhythmic. I don't know. It phases in and out. Sometimes we end up doing the slight reggae thing to it. Sometimes it sounds maybe a little bit like the Byrds or something. It sort of changes every night, that song. That gets my notorious flat vocal treatment, which I get to sing as many notes flat or sharp
Why is it that
as
you
the
sing
microphone
flat?
will tolerate.
Yeah, why is it that you sing flat though? I mean,
Really
does that not worry you?
Well, see, we came out of these bars in New York where there's really no monitors and there's no regard for a sound system at all. So you just sort of get on stage and you just sort of like project, and then if you save a little money, you go into and do a little tape, and then you hear what you sound like. And you're like, God. So then maybe you borrow a bass cabinet or something with speakers, and you use that for a monitor on stage to try to hear your vocals. I mean, all first albums have the singing. And listen to Jagger singing on the early records. It's so incredibly nasal compared to what it is now. Singing is something that takes a long time to develop. Every album, a vocalist seems to change. Dylan was the real notorious one for that. The different vocal styles. He started very nasal and went into softer things. It's a matter of experience or something.
Did you originally see yourself more as a guitarist than a vocalist?
Yeah, I was playing guitar maybe 8 years before I started singing. But to me, the thing with a vocalist, I mean, Neil Young doesn't have perfect intonation, and he's a singer I admire. Dylan is another one. Bowie is another one. People say think Bowie has such great intonation. He really doesn't if you listen to him, but he has a good way of putting things across. Maybe some of this came out of, I don't know. I don't know what it came out of really. Blues singing, some of it, maybe some of the French singing, the way they half talk a story or something, half sing it, half talk it.
Still, presumably, if television get the sort of success that everyone's predicting, you can afford some sophisticated monitors.
Well, we're supposed to have them on this tour, so maybe we'll be lucky.